This is June the 13th, it's a quarter to 10 a.m. 2012, and I'm back at filming the interdimensional or hyperdimensional entities in the same spot I was filming them the last two times, and today is also a good lighting situation where I can get some video of the organisms and how they act and behave. So, as I was saying, the cluster, they look like globules that coalesce or cluster together, and they can be white, black, they can be opaque flesh tone, and they can be brown, light or dark brown, and also they can be green when it's a situation around trees, but they can actually assume any color depending on what's around them, because they have the capacity and the capability to blend into any kind of a surrounding. And you can see the organisms are very active this morning, and this is at the bottom near the ground, so there's no other light, and it's pretty dark in that area except for those organisms. Okay, they're right above the wall, and they're pretending to be shrubbery or whatever, any type of a plant life that could be around a place like that. But in reality, those are all organisms, and those organisms are not from Earth. These are alien organisms on this planet. And they move around and do all kinds of weird things. I'll just back up to get a clearer shot of that. And that whole area there's no other light except for the light that they're emitting. And deep inside there, the sun doesn't reach that part where what you're looking at now are the organisms where there is no sunlight penetrating through the thickness of the brush and the bushes and whatever else is in there. But you can see that they're very active regardless, and that they're moving not very fast right now, and they're moving counterclockwise. Okay, so they're just slowly turning and turning counterclockwise as they do their daily routine. And their daily routine is reproduction in this area or in that spot, because that's where they've set up almost like a factory for reproduction, and they're just turning them out a whole bunch every minute. And that's what that is. They're just either replicating or cloning or even laying eggs, duplicating cells or replicas of themselves. They're doing all kinds of strange things like that, but the outcome of all of that is they're just making a lot more of themselves by the minute. And you can see the movement of the organisms, and you can definitely tell that those are not leaves or anything else. but organisms. And these organisms, they are actually entities that are intelligent. These are not bugs. They can be bugs. They can turn themselves into just about anything. They can create holograms of just about anything or anyone, but they're not your, microbe or even an insect per se. They're intelligent organisms that can do a whole lot of things in terms of how they act, behave, in terms of what they can do, and in terms of how they cooperate with one another in all the tasks that they perform. It's all done very efficiently, very intelligently, and it's all very thought out, it's planned out, and there is no guesswork. They know what they're doing, and they seem to be doing what they want to be doing very well. So I'm going to move up, because as soon as they know I'm filming them, they start moving around in a certain spot, so I have to move to another spot in order to get some movement. Okay, so you can see them there better moving around. And that's no light penetrating from anywhere from the back, and it's not sunlight reflecting off of leaves. Those are organisms, because there's no light there right now whatsoever, and they're the ones that are glowing. And there's a lot of organisms there in the dark part that are not glowing. There's actually more organisms that don't glow in that little spot right now than there are ones that are glowing. And you could see that there's a lot of them. Now, the thing with these organisms is that they can just disperse. They can disperse those little globules or orbs into tiny bits and make very small orbs or globules, and they can make them so small that they're beyond a microscopic size. They could be so small you can't see them with a microscope. They're like on an atomic or subatomic scale. And when they start spinning fast counterclockwise, when they're being filmed, and they don't like being filmed very much, what they do is they create a vortex, counterclockwise rotation type vortex at a very high speed, and then at the same time they reduce those particles to size, to a very fine small size, and they spin them around faster and faster, and that's what creates a blur. And the more the speed increases around the nucleus in that vortex that's going counterclockwise, the more blur is created. And the finer the mist or the shield that they create in front to safeguard from being watched or seen, the finer that the particles are, the smaller the particles are, the less you see, because they block out more. The faster the spin and the smaller the particles, the more gets blocked out by the blur. It's actually more efficient that way, and the less you can see. So right now you can still see, some movement, and you can see the shape and sizes of the organisms. But these organisms, they also cluster, and they can cluster into gigantic sizes. I believe that the whole thing is just one organism, which splits into all these parts and pieces, and it doesn't matter how small these pieces are that it splits up into. Every single piece is intelligent, and every single piece can work independently, but they all are connected and they all communicate, and all the information that any organism experiences or records or whatever they do with information, it all gets passed down through all of them. So the larger organism, the organism itself, that's the, you know, the mother lode of all of this, that organism knows everything that every single little piece of it or part of it knows. And that's what makes this organism very intelligent, because it has information from a lot of sources which are actually itself, but they work independently and are intelligent independently to gather information that's needed. Now, I don't know what information they gather. They gather all sorts of information, and what they've been doing in this area is reproducing. So they need information about food sources like animals, birds, insects, and things like that. They need information about people because they don't want to be discovered, so they keep tabs on who's around, when they can be active, when they, you know, have to calm down. And they need information about location. Where's the best spot to set up a new colony? Because these things live in a colony or a hive, like bees or wasps, because they've turned themselves into wasps in this area. There's a lot of wasps flying around with 4 wings, and they fly very fast at supersonic speeds, and they can grow very large. I've seen gigantic ones lots of times, and I've seen some, you know, juveniles and even smaller babies. The wasps themselves, that aspect of the organism, the wasps have about 10 different stages of development, and they don't look the same at every development stage. They change what they look like when they change the stages of development. So basically speaking, the wasps are one aspect of how this organism has manifested itself in this area. Now, there are a lot of other manifestations, like birds, and a lot of the birds lately have all been holograms, and it's these orbs that are really flying around, but they're producing holographic projections to disguise their movement. So when you see a bird, you think that the bird is flying, but when you look closer, it's actually the orbs are flying, and they're projecting a holographic image of this and that bird, a seagull, you know, a blackbird, a sparrow, a pigeon, all kinds of birds. The birds that are normally found in this area, because the organism checks out, you know, what's around, and it doesn't go too far from the norm. It doesn't create things that are not familiar to people. It uses familiar images so that nothing seems out of order or out of line, and people don't start to question. Okay, because the whole thing is about secrecy, remaining secret, and their location remaining secret, and what they're doing remaining secret. So they don't want to be discovered, they don't want anyone to know what they're doing, and they don't want to be exposed. So they're not very happy when I do the filming, and as you can see, the tree is moving around violently there, but that whole tree is just those organisms, because even what looks like leaves are just green orbs, because they can assume green color. So you see how the branches are moving? There's no wind. It's a hot day today. There's no wind. It's going to be like 32 degrees. That's Celsius. And there's no wind whatsoever. And There's no reason for that tree to be shaking like that, because there's nothing else shaking. Only where I point the camera, the trees start to shake. No matter where I point the camera, if the organisms are in that tree, they'll start to bend the tree, shake it, the leaves will go crazy and flutter all around. You know, it's like a million butterflies all at once in that spot. And all kinds of things start to happen. Okay, so right there where the black part is, that's the darkest and the largest concentration of the black organisms. Now the black organisms can be orbs, but they can also be those black birds that I film a lot, that have those straight wings that look like glider wings, and they're mounted on the bottom of the bird, which is really strange because no bird has wings on the bottom of its underside. All the birds have wings mounted on top, and so do insects. Insects are their wings mounted on top, but there's been a lot of these organisms that have manifested that either have wings on the bottom, but they're either birds or insects. It doesn't matter what form they took. They have wings on the bottom and the wings flat, which would be like next to impossible that they can flop like a bird from the bottom where the position of the wings is. So that's a strange development, and I haven't figured out how they do it, but that's what's happening. And the only other thing that I know about wings on the bottom is that airplanes have wings on the bottom. You know, a single, not planes with two sets of wings, not biplanes, but like single wing planes. They have wings on the bottom. If they're any type of a plane that moves fast, okay, like Cessnas and other private planes, they have wings on top. But planes that can move a little bit faster, they always have wings on the bottom because they're more efficient for a faster flight. And these things that have those wings on the bottom, they have super designed wings, just like a high quality glider. That's how the design is of these wings. They're made for very fast gliding and efficient gliding, and the design is just wonderful how the wings are designed. And some of these birds I've seen very large. I filmed them even above 50,000 feet, and no bird flies around 50,000 feet or above it. But I filmed these birds that are as large as jets at 50,000 feet or more, and I filmed these large wasps also at that height, and they're gigantic. And there's a lot of strange things going on, so it's hard to say sometimes if what I was filming was a holographic projection or if it was real, because these things can make such excellent two-dimensional and three-dimensional holograms, and it's difficult to you know, sometimes tell the difference between the hologram and the real thing. But a lot of the time the things were real, okay, at least 50% of the time the things I was filming were real, and the other 50% of the time they were holograms. So there were some, you know, real objects or entities, gigantic ones, captured on camera when I was filming, and the rest of them were just holographic projections, because these things can put them out instantaneously and create any kind of a hologram they want, whether it's familiar to us or unfamiliar to us, it doesn't matter, but they can create one just in an instant. It doesn't take them any time whatsoever. The other things that these things do very well is they manifest themselves into living organisms like animals, birds, trees, any kind of a plant life, and just about anything that can move. And I've seen that happen over and over and over, and they make such good manifestations of the organisms that they're manifesting into that it's next to impossible to tell the difference between their manifestation and the organism that's real. You can't tell the difference, and this is very dangerous because you could never know what you're dealing with. Are you dealing with them, or are you dealing with you know, a bird or an insect that's familiar to you, you know, or an animal that's familiar to you. I mean, it could be your dog or your cat, and it could be them, and you wouldn't know the difference, and that's very dangerous because we don't know much about these things, and we don't know what they can do or what their purpose for coming here is. Now the other thing I want to show is those branches right there, and those branches right there have what amounts to cobwebbing, and you see how distorted the image is right away as soon as you move in close. And I'll just move over here to show the branch. Okay, you see the cobwebbing there all over it. Now that branch is not a real branch. That branch is composed of zillions of these organisms. And you see how the trees start to, not the trees, the organisms start to move fast, okay? Because I'm pointing the camera there. I want you to keep noticing that. Every place I put the camera, as soon as I put the camera there, until they get set up and start to create that blur, and the picture will blur more and more as they have time to set up. What they do is they bring more organisms in front, so they block my view by doing that vortex spin counterclockwise, faster and faster, and they reduce the size of the organisms to smaller and smaller, finer and finer, so that they can go even faster, and you see how the whole picture just blurs out and you can't get an image. Okay? So this makes these organisms very smart. That's a very smart thing to do, very intelligent, and you just don't do that unless you have the means to do it, the technology, unless you know how to do that. Okay, so this shows a high degree of intelligence right there, just the way they blurred the picture. And I want you to watch this blur, because this blur took a whole lot of intelligence, know-how, capability, and technology right there. You see how they blurred the whole thing out? Now you can't even see the branch, and before you could see it. And all where that is like a cobweb is just sheer organisms. And that whole shield that they just created that's going counterclockwise in a vortex, that's also all organisms. They are all over. Everything there and all over in the air. And that's why they can do that. They can sum up zillions and zillions of them. I don't know how many there are. There are so many. There's no one that could even count them. Not even any computer could count them. So the way they are able to do all of this is because of such high numbers and concentrations of them, and because they're smart enough to know how to do that, and how to spin in a vortex very fast, and how to subdivide their body masses into tiny little globules or orbs that are smaller than microscopic, and how to create that veil and a mist of energy and matter moving at a very fast rate in a vortex, counterclockwise vortex, in order to create a screen and a shield against anyone watching what they're doing. So that took a lot of intelligence. Okay, most people, 99% of the people on our planet are not that intelligent. So this makes them dangerous. Okay, over here, I don't know if it'll come out, but there are black shapes there. And those black shapes are entities, and they are composed of orbs, but those are the things that just zip off and fly around like those black birds or big wasps. When they leave that cluster, they look like they're two-dimensional, but as soon as they go off, they're three-dimensional. As soon as they leave the cluster a little bit, a few feet, they turn into from a two-dimensional holographic image into a three-dimensional holographic image, and then the wasps are even real. They manifest into a real thing right after that, and they can sting you. They can do everything that a real wasp can do, and these wasps have 4 wings and travel at super high velocities, that they're very dangerous, and they can grow to a very large size. So those wasps are part of the overall scheme of what this organism is about. Okay, and as I said the other time, on the 11th when I made the last video, was they're always around the power cables, and the power cables, all of them, are always glowing because they're sucking out, they're drawing out all the power out of them, and even more power than the cables can handle, and they're creating this overload, so the cables are actually glowing wherever these organisms are. Okay. Notice how the cables are just glowing everywhere. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with the lighting or settings or with the camera or anything. This is the lighting that they create in their immediate presence, because they're making the power lines glow, and that's creating an extra lighting situation, and is affecting the lighting of the camera image. Okay, but you can see the organisms moving right there next to the power line. Okay, and that's up higher near the top of the trees there. And you see, every time they know they're on camera, they just stop. They slow down. Now that's hard for them to do, because they're the organisms that need to be moving. Their whole thing is about high velocity. They are at a high vibrations rate and at a high velocity rate. So for them to stop moving, you know, like, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for them to stop themselves than to move at excessive speed. And so I'm creating all kinds of problems for them by filming them. And they can't hold still for a long time. They have to, you see, they have to keep moving. And they can only stop for a short time, because their whole life cycle revolves around fast movement and fast vibrations rates in general and overall. Okay, notice how they're using that branch there to connect to the power cable. Okay, and notice that all the organisms right there on the top of the tree are making the leaves. Okay, there are no leaves. There are not even branches. That entire section of bushes and trees there is strictly composed of these organisms. And you see how the branches glow? Okay? This is not normal, and there's nothing in nature that can do that. Okay? What these organisms are doing is they replace the trees, okay, and they're using those dead branches that they replaced to charge up from the power cable. And today it's really glowing. I mean, look at that whole thing. It's just glowing. The branch, I mean, I'm talking about. The branch is just glowing. And that means they're drawing out a lot of power. Look at the branch. Look at the branch today. It's worse than the other day. Look, it is totally just all them. And it's them all the way down to the bottom. You see those spots along the way? That's concentrations, but the entire branch is just them. Okay, and what they're using that branch, they're using that branch to channel the electricity through the clusters. And there's a lot of clusters. See, no matter where I put the camera, there's a whole lot of clusters in that area. Near the ground, higher up, all over. You see how everything is just glowing, and there's a lot of energy. The whole thing is just swimming in energy, because they're drawing the energy from the power cables. You see that branch? How it's just glowing? So that's where all the energy is coming from. They're stealing electricity and using it for their own reproductive purposes. Okay, here they are in the leaves. Okay, and those are no leaves. They're not leaves. Those are the organisms that are pretending to be the leaves on trees. And most trees in this city have those things instead of leaves. The leaves have all been eaten, and all the trees and the bark and everything. What they're doing is producing holography or holographic images that look just like leaves and bark and all that and branches, but it's really all just them. This is what the trees really look like. And that's what's happening in all of the trees in this city. Okay, no exception. Every tree in this city is undergoing this process of change. And it's all these organisms making those changes in a very efficient, very intelligent, and very determined way. They're just going on and on and on, and they're not letting anything get in their way or stopping them. They're just going about their business like there's no tomorrow. Every day there's more and more of them, and they're doing more and more destruction in terms of plant life, in terms of animal life, in terms of bird life, and in terms of insect life. They're destroying a lot of things, and they're just consuming it. I don't know if they actually eat or just consume it for energy in a different way than actually chomping down and chewing the insect or the bird or whatever. But because they can turn themselves into animals and insects, they can do it that way. But I think that's not efficient enough for them, and they just absorb it like a mold or a fungus would. So when a bird or an animal comes in to where they are, they just absorb it. And then they make a replica, either a hologram or a replica manifestation of what that bird or animal used to look like, and even how it acted. They just take an entire imprint of the living thing and produce another one, but that's their copy, and their copy does whatever they want it to do. It's no longer an animal or a bird or anything else, even a person that walked in there. It comes out as their copy, and they control their copy. So that's what makes them dangerous as well, because they have their own copies. Look at what they're doing to the wires, okay? And look how much glow that branch has now. Okay, these are your power cables. Okay, so whoever ever said that that's not what they're doing has no idea what's going on, or has a good idea of what's going on and is one big liar and denying all of this is going on, because this is what's going on. You see how that branch is glowing? It's taking all of that power, and look at how much overload there is on the power lines. Just look at that. And no one can deny that this is an overload in the power lines, and that branch is connected to the power lines and is drawing power from them and feeding that power down the line into the clusters below where these organisms are. Okay, that's really what's happening. Look at the clusters all down here and all the way down. The whole thing is one major, very efficient, very uniquely set up operation. And it takes a high degree of intelligence and a whole lot of careful planning to be able to get to this point and to be able to do this, not just in this one little spot that I'm showing. They are doing this all over this city, in a billion places all over this city. This is going on right now. Okay? So, this is dangerous. That kind of an overload in power lines is very dangerous. Because if anything goes wrong, if those power cables snap from all that overload, they're going to set a fire to anything they touch, or electrocute anyone or anything they touch. Those are high voltage cables, and these things are using them for their own reproduction, for their own power, for their own everything. Okay, and they're stealing it. They're not paying for all this power like we have to. They're stealing all that power, and they're getting it for free. Okay, now that's what's wrong with the picture. Okay, that's what's wrong with the whole picture. They are systematically utilizing our power for their own purpose, and that's what's wrong with the whole picture. I'm just gonna go over here where it's dark so that no one can say it's light from anywhere else. Okay, right here. Okay, that's a white orb cluster with some black orbs up higher, but I'm going to focus on the white orb cluster for a while. Okay, because you can best see how the orbs move, how they coalesce together, and what they look like at home base, because that's what this is. This is home base. And you can see the fibrous nature of the organism, how it spreads fibers to connect different parts of it, or itself. Okay, those are fibers. And the cobweb looking stuff, those are all fibers, intelligent fibers that can feel and touch and find each other and connect. And that's how this thing spreads, like some mold. It just lets those feelers out, the fibers, and then they connect because they are in different areas. So they go searching for one another until they connect when they find each other. So they know I'm filming them and they slow down the activity. Unfortunately, I wanted to show their motion. Okay, I can come back to that. Let's see what else they're doing here. Okay, look at the excitement every time I point the camera to a different spot. Remember I told you to watch how when I move the camera, they get all excited until they get set up and blur the image. You see how they it's like panic. You know, it's like panic, immediate panic. And then they set up, and then they don't worry about it because they're secure because they've blurred out the image. There's more parts glowing today than on the 11th when I last filmed. And the reason for that is because of all that electricity they're drawing out from the power lines. The power cables that I was showing before. So this is what's causing, you know, all that glowing, because now they have more power to work with and more of them activate to a higher vibrational frequency or rate, and that's when they start to glow, when they're at a high vibrational frequency or rate and they're charged up. That means that they're charged up and they can glow. Okay, you see the fibers? You see the fibers there? There's a good example of the fibers spreading right there. Okay, those things right there. That's how the fibers are spreading. Now they can spread and then turn themselves into leaves, branches, anything they want. But there's how they make the fibers and how they spread the fibers. So what they're doing actually is growing themselves, multiplying themselves, and spreading themselves. And that's a lot of things that they're doing. And in the process, they're eating up everything in sight for more energy, because the electricity from the power cables is not enough. They need to eat, you know, regular things for food, like regular living things, because that is a living organism. Regardless of whether it came from space or not, it's still a living organism, and it requires sustenance and food, and it eats living matter. Okay, so they go search out living matter, and they get it, and they consume it. They consume it either by eating it outright when they're in a manifested animal or a bird or insect form or whatever other form they create for their manifestation, or they consume it by absorption. They just surround it with all these billions of orbs and the thing disappears. But they've consumed it and absorbed it and took the energy from that thing, and the thing is gone. Whether it's an animal, a bird, could even be a person, anybody. Nobody's excluded. They don't have any diet menu where it says we're not going to eat this or that. Whatever is alive, that's their target. Okay, so right now they're eating animals, birds, and insects, but as the organism grows, you know, what's next on the menu is the question. That's the big question. What's next on the menu for this organism? You see the glow there? Now you can see it. Okay, that's not coming from anywhere, that glow. Those are the organisms glowing. Right there, dead center. Just try and get that closer. Okay, so those are all clusters, because these things are all about clusters. Everything they do revolves around clusters, and they form clusters on a minuscule scale, submicroscopic, subatomic scale. They form clusters there, and they can form gigantic clusters up in space that could be larger than this entire planet. So there's a lot of them, a lot of parts to this organism, and the organism itself is huge. It's enveloped our entire planet. That's how huge it is. And it's doing a real job on it. So when they cluster up together, it depends how many cluster, and that's the size of the organism they create. It all depends how many of them can cluster or do cluster. And that's what determines the size of the organism that they're going to create. So it's just all numbers. And these things are good with numbers because look how many of them there are. They gotta be good with numbers. So all those black things there, those are the things that just take off and fly around like black birds or big black wasps and things like that. They just leave that as a two-dimensional hologram, turn into a three-dimensional hologram, and then manifest into the real thing. Whatever the real thing is going to be that they want to manifest into. But in the beginning, they leave as a holographic projection. And now you can see that it's that's glowing there, the cluster, and that it is not light coming from the back or reflecting off of anything. It's the cluster itself that's producing the light that you see, because it is fully charged right now with all that electricity drawn out of the power cables. So I wanted to rest that question once and for all, that it's not sunlight or the lake behind there penetrating through the trees and causing the light and this and that, what people were saying. No, you're all wrong. The organism is producing the light because it is supercharged, because it has stolen a whole lot of electric power from the power cables, and therefore it has enough energy to produce its own light. And that's really what's happening there. Okay, so you see how excited it is? It just doesn't like being on camera. Okay, you see all that activity? It shows that it's not very happy. I'm expecting electromagnetic pulse anytime. So I'm not going to stick around in the same spot too long, because they'll figure out where exactly the camera is and send a pulse here and burn another camera out like they've done to 3 of them already. because right now they're supercharged with all that electrical energy, and they can send a good strong pulse today. And I'm not going to take a chance on losing another camera, so I'm going to move it to a different spot. Let's see what else I can try and pick up. Okay, this one over here. Notice it's all right next to houses and everything. And there are people living there. Look at that thing glowing right there. You see how when I put the camera right on that spot, right away, the activity, you know, it's like panic. And now they have to create a shield in front, because if they don't want me to see that, they gotta muster up all of them from all over the area, immediate area, and then start spinning around to blur that thing out with a vortex, counterclockwise vortex. Okay, you see, and it's starting to do it already. Okay, so just watch that thing blur right out. Sometimes they'll project out holograms to try and get me to follow them with the camera so that I don't film that spot. I go chasing the hologram, but you know, I've learned my lessons already, and I don't do that anymore. So I film what I want to film, not what they want me to film. They can keep their holograms. I've seen plenty of them already. And the camera shake is neither the wind nor me, because the camera is on this really solid tripod. I mean, I couldn't shake it. I had to kick it to shake it. That's how solid a tripod is, and it's really bolted on solid. So what's shaking is they're disturbing the dimensional field right there, and that's what's shaking. The whole fiber of reality is shaking because of the mass of them now building up in front there, trying to go around in that counterclockwise vortex in order to prevent me from getting any kind of information, whatever they think is information there that they need to hide. And you see how everything is starting to like just jump around? But what they're doing is they're the ones jumping around, and they're moving that whole area. The whole fiber of reality they're moving, the dimensional reality, by their movement, because there's so many of them that they're distorting the image just by their sheer body mass. See all that shaking? It's just too much. The camera is absolutely not moving. But they'll do every single trick in the book to try to prevent me from taking any video. They're just all over that. power cable. They're just right on it, all over. Look how bright those branches are now. That's a different one. I just want to show that the whole cable, no matter where I go, the whole cable and all the branches associated that are leaning on it and drawing power, they're all glowing a lot more now than before, as is the cable itself. Okay, there you can see a good example of how they draw the power. You can actually see it done. You see where these blue parts are? Okay, just watch where the blue part is and where the white part is. Okay, see the big orb there? The big white orb? Right below the cable and on that dead tree branch. And look at the blue orbs on the right, under the cable as well. So now you can see that they can assume any color and that it's them that's glowing. Like there's a green orb at that center and a pink orb next to the white one. Okay, so you have a green one, a blue one, and a white one. That's 4 colors already. And there's a brown one under the green one. So that's 5 colors. So now you can see how they can change color and be any color. And you can also see that they can glow. And you can also see that they can drain electricity from a power line without any problem. Any problem. And look at how they're overloading that power line by drawing power, much more power out than the power cable should be handling or can handle. So they assume color from their environment, surroundings. They assume color from anything that's around them because they want to blend in and not cause any alarm, because they don't want anyone to know what it is that they're doing. They like it. They like secrets. They do everything in secret. And they hate when they're discovered like this. And that's why there's always a panic when I put the camera on them. See, as soon as they know that they're on camera, all hell breaks loose. They right away scramble. See the glob of them right on the cable? Right there? Yeah, watch. So watch the activity. As soon as I put the camera on them, there's a lot of excitement. They're starting to go counterclockwise. You see, they're gonna make a shield. See that? Just too much. Look at all that motion. No wind, no wind. You'll be hearing it because the microphones are sensitive on the camera. It's dual stereo pickups. Okay, now I don't know anyone who can call that a tree or a plant or anything else. So that's what we have for trees in Toronto nowadays. They're not real. Okay, that's our tree life and plant life. Take a good look. Wow, you see, they spread more of those fibers. There wasn't that many before. You see how many they spread in a very short time, just a few minutes? You can see them actually making more. Okay, these are very dangerous entities, and it's a very dangerous organism as a whole. Okay, this thing will just crawl over everything and just consume everything, every living thing. I think this is seriously dangerous, this organism. And they don't like anyone seeing them in their own dimensional space like I can. They're really pissed off about that because they thought they were safe and nobody could see them. And they don't like when anyone can see them in their own dimensional space, because that's a threat to them. Because if I know where they are, I can go find them and do something about it. That's why they don't like it. And then I go to this right here, the branch that's glowing hot right next to the house. You see? It's right next to the house. Look how charged that is. And that's right next to the house. And look at all those fibers they've spread all over. That's going to create what will look like more branches, and then they'll create more leaves or more organisms to put in place of leaves. So what they're doing is expanding those bushes and little trees so that they can take up more space around the city like that by pretending that they're bushes and trees. Okay, but what they are is alien organisms. I mean, look at that glow right there. Look at the red glow right there, and how that branch is just glowing and charged up. Look down here now. Here's a pure energy. Plasma. Right there. Those little orbs, they're in the plasma state. This part right here, the real white part, that's a plasma state right there. You can get this camera to stay. Okay, that's a plasma state. Okay, what you're looking at right now is the plasma state of these organisms. So plasma and heat and the high frequency vibrations, they all have something to do with how they spread those fibers. And the other part is the intelligence on where to spread them and how to connect them and what to make out of them when you do that. And right now, they're making more branches so they can make more bushes. Okay, and you've seen the process right on video. It's happening all over. So they're just expanding because there's more of them, and they're enlarging that colony right now. They're in the process of making the colony be bigger. Okay, there's what the green leaves look like. Okay, that's why I keep saying it's not a real tree anymore. There are no leaves. Okay, that's what the leaves look like. It's just all them. There are no leaves and there are no trees there. That's a big cluster. That's a real big cluster. That's a big cluster right there. That whole part right there, that's a big cluster. You can tell that even the orbs are bigger. So that one's been around for a long time. That's a large cluster. Look at all that energy just going right through the cluster. They're in such a high vibration state, they can even create their own energy. They don't need to plug into the power line or anything else. They can create energy just by motion. Look at this tree branch. That's the one that's connected to the power. I was wondering why it was glowing. Look, it's glowing all the way up, feeding the larger cluster in the tree, all the way at the top. See that? The whole branch is glowing all the way up. And in its path on the way up, it's charging up all those, that's why it's glowing right there so much. Okay, look at all of that. Look where it's really bright yellow there, how they're glowing. Okay, they're actually glowing in daylight. If these were up in the sky, you'd call them a UFO. Just look at that branch glowing that's going down to the power cables. That's no longer a branch, that's just the organisms. Look how it's glowing. All the way up. See, that one's not, alright, it is connected, but they're not drawing power on that one. Just on the other one on the other side. Look at all these. Right around the power cables. There's the black entities right there. You see them all? Those green things, those are entities too, because that's a dead tree branch. Just yesterday there was no leaves there, and you see how they're creating leaves now? You can look at my videos from like just a few days ago. There was no leaves in those things. Those were all dead trees. But now they're gonna put green leaves. So this is where the action is on this side. Yeah, you're making a lot of things there. An entire new forest looks like. Anyway, this video now is almost 1 hour 15 minutes long. That's 15, not 50. So I'm gonna just stop. But I think I got a lot of good footage. I hope it comes out of these organisms and how they operate, and I have them in action like that. Okay, so that nobody can say I made this up and that it's not organisms from space, because these are organisms from space. Okay, we have nothing on Earth that's like that, and as smart as that in that form. Okay, Sure, we have things that look like cells, and they can reproduce and all of that, but not in a way these things do. Not this fast, and not so smart. Okay, no matter where you put the camera, like, I think I'll end it right here. Show how they're expanding the fibers and creating connections, making connections. That's what they're doing. And you can see how the dimensional fields work. When sometimes you can see the energy just flow, and that's where you can see the dimensional field in play. Okay, so today we're going to end the video. It's right now 11 a.m. June the 13th, 2012. Thank you for watching, and you've been watching the extraterrestrial, not only interdimensional but hyperdimensional entities in their own dimensional space. This was their dimension today, and you got to see how they act, how they behave, and all the things that they're doing. And what they're doing mostly is merging their dimension into ours so that they can use all our stuff. They want food, they want energy, and they want control. And if you agree to that, then, just let them keep going and doing what they do. And don't worry, soon that'll happen. But if you don't agree, then something needs to be done. The first thing that needs to be done is for people to realize that they're here, and to be able to see them, and to be aware where they are, what they're doing, and all that. That's the first step. That's the step I would recommend for everyone. Learn how to, watch my video, listen to what I say, learn how to recognize what they look like, learn how to recognize where they are and the activities they're involved in, and then whatever you want to do about it will come to you. But first you need to know where they are and what they look like, and where you can find them, and then everything else will fall into place. So thanks for viewing. Have a nice day. This is Super Mushmouse signing off from Toronto.